Hi, welcome to Tech Journey Insights, the podcast where we navigate the ever-evolving world of technology, looking at switching careers and creating your very own path. In this series, we hear from guests who've done just that, and we continue to share our own stories, exploring the human side of technology, and also looking at new stories that are shaping the digital world. So, Rebecca, what's going on with you this week?
So it's been a very, very busy week this week. We got an investment readiness course with Creative UK. We've spent 2 days in Birmingham doing pitches and all sorts. So it's been quite a journey learning all about that and the different ways that you can get funding for your company and things like that. So it's been really, really, really interesting, tiring, but really, really fun. So what have you been up to, Beverly?
Well, my big news this week is earlier in the year in February, I flew to Pittsburgh and I kept it quite quiet what I was doing in Pittsburgh. And it's just been released, my contributions to the AI for K-12 and CSTA updates to teaching artificial intelligence across all of K-12. So just me from the UK and my contributions. I've put it on LinkedIn. I mean, as we know, AI is changing everything, and teaching about AI is incredibly important. And how do we help those learners and also provide guidance for teachers? So that is up there. I'm going to put it into the comments once this is released, but very proud of that piece of work because I've contributed to AI conversations on both sides of the Atlantic, and very, very pleased about that. So that's my big news.
Amazing, well done. So who's our guest then?
Our guest this week is a very special lady that I met a while back, and let me just give you a little snippet on her. Her name is Katie Stickley, and she's a co-founder of Those Who Can, formerly Did Teach. And she's going to tell us all about that in a moment. And Did Teach championed the skills of teachers inside, outside, and beyond the classroom. Without further ado, I think we should bring Katie in and hear from her.
Okay, here she comes. Welcome,
Hello.
Katie.
Hi, ladies. Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome. No problem. Katie, tell us a bit about yourself and Those Who Can. Just give us an overview. Give our listeners an overview.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background's teaching, like both of yourselves, a secondary school teacher for 19 years. And during my time at school, my school started cutting everyone's TLRs. So we're trying to save money, had a deficit. And my husband's school were making compulsory redundancies, two things that we never really heard of before. So that kind of set us down this line of like, well, what can we do if you need to make extra money, or if you are being forced out of teaching through a redundancy and you don't necessarily want to go back into teaching, what can you do? So we had a look around and found that there was nowhere. Everyone just kind of went back into supply teaching or just went wherever. So we spent a lot of time researching this, and then that's how we came up with the business Did Teach. We're thinking, okay, well, let's signpost some places for them and help these teachers. So that's how it came about. So background in teaching, and then out of a need, I suppose, to solve a problem.
It's really, really important. That's a great story to hear that against the backdrop of issues with redundancies, which redundancies continue to play out right now. It's within teaching, unbelievably. We've got cuts in the independent sector, and it's also in the private sector because there's a lot of change going on out there. I think you interact with more teachers than any of us do through Those Who Can and Did Teach. So what sort of stories are you hearing from the teachers?
Oh, hearing lots of stories about redundancies, which is a real shame. Talking to people about just schools not having money. And I think it's like there's a backdrop of austerity in the public sector, isn't there? There always has been. And now in the private sector, that's creeping in with the VAT that parents are having to pay. And I think that's been really interesting, hearing that sort of shift of like schools are just cutting teachers. And yeah, I mean, it's just really sad, and it's up and down the country as well. It's not just sort of like small localized areas, but also I think teachers are needing, you know, they've got different lifestyles now, so they're needing a different way of working too. And we're hearing a lot about that. So not just about, you know, them having to leave teaching, but this idea of like, well, they need to care for a child or an elderly parent, and more so with elderly parents, that, you know, there's this idea of care. So exactly like we did when we had our kids, that we took maternity leave, it needs to be something like that as well, to help these teachers out, because the population's getting older, but we're not as fit and healthy as we should be with age. So yeah, that's the kind of stories that I'm hearing from teachers on the ground in the UK.
Amazing. And so if you were in a coffee shop with one of your friends who was a teacher, and they were telling you, I'm really, really stressed, I want to change my career, or I'm thinking about how what can I do with my career? What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I think to start with, I probably like really try and get to grips with what it was that was making them upset to start with. So, because it is not necessarily leaving teaching, and that's kind of how our business has pivoted to. It started with, oh, if you want to leave teaching, here's the direction. But then the audience started changing, and they're sort of saying, well, I don't necessarily want to leave teaching. Like, what else can I do? Oh, I can climb up the ranks. I can take on responsibilities. I can create a club, or, you know, a teacher-led initiative that I'm passionate about, and that I can put my energy into that. I could move to a different school or work with a different demographic of students. So yeah, that's when we started changing the name to Those Who Can, because we realized that it's not just about leaving teaching. But say, for example, my friend was adamant, right, that's it, I'm done. I've dedicated, 15 years and I'd like a fresh start. You know, there's no shame in that. And I think that's a really important thing, is that, we go into it like it's a vocation, but it doesn't need to be like that anymore. And putting any time into teaching and helping young people is amazing. And all those skills that you've honed are amazing. So it's reminding them that they have got these great skills. I think there's a sort of normalization with teaching, isn't there? That we kind of say, oh, I'm just a teacher and I don't know anything else. And actually, I mean, you both are a credit to that as well. How much have you guys done? And all of those sort of rooted in the education system that you've kind of grown in the first part of your career in. So if they were like adamant they wanted to leave, I would ask them to really think about what they love about their job and what they don't like about their job. Think about sort of environments that they thrive in. Do they prefer being the boss? Do they prefer working with a group of people? Do they prefer like in an office or in a big co-working space? So get them to think about that. And then interesting, I recorded a course, and I'm going to have to change it because my advice has like changed since then. So was going on to LinkedIn and finding companies that you like, and then seeing what companies are similar. But actually, my advice has now changed, and go on to your AI assistant and things that you enjoy doing, the skills that you have, what your passions are, where your location is, what kind of work do you want, hybrid, flexible, do you want to, work in an office full time? Put in all of these things and then say sectors that you're keen on. So it might be for lots of teachers, the charity sector comes up time and time again. Obviously the education sector, they can sidestep into that with no hassle, but charity comes up quite a bit. And sometimes it's finance as well. They really like this idea and almost like leveling the playing field. So working with financial companies that help people like get better with their money management. And, so it's still this idea, I guess, of teachers helping, but pick a sector, chuck it in with all that information that you've given to ChatGTP and ask it to say, right, I want 50 companies, I want their website links, I want the best person to contact, and I want you to say why they're a good fit for me in a spreadsheet. Get that, and then it's a case of just going through. And if you say you look at the first one and you don't like the website, it's really boring, and the second one's the same, then you need to refine what you're telling your AI to do. If you are looking at the website and you think, oh, I like this website, and they've got an article here that I've not thought of before, and that's interesting. Oh, what's their social media like? You'll know that that's a really good company for you. So the idea is not to look for jobs, but to look for organizations that you're going to thrive in. And I think that's the best advice I'd give my teacher friend.
That's sterling advice. That it isn't just for teachers. I tell you what, I think that's for anyone job hunting. I mean, you've got a background as a careers counsellor, and that's just really come through there. I mean, I think our listeners are really going to enjoy that, because we've got this backdrop of redundancies, but we still need to evolve and move with the changing times, use the technology, and that's a really good example of using artificial intelligence and AI to improve your life, move forward. And I really do like that. So there's I've as I said, interact with your website for quite a while. Have you got any other insights around careers and careers counseling as you can share?
Yeah, I think where we're sort of moving now, we're seeing a bit of a shift of teachers looking for fractured working. So a bit like we would probably call it a portfolio career in the past, but they started to use this term sort of fractured working, and it does fit quite nicely. So I'm meeting with teachers who have found a job through our website, but they're also keeping one foot in the door of teaching. So we met a lady at Bet, and she was working for Canopy, EdTech company, and it's all about Google education. She was absolutely loving it. Background is an English teacher, so you wouldn't necessarily connect that dot that she would work for EdTech. But one day a week, she was teaching A-level English. And she just said, my life is so rich now because I've got one foot in the door with this, I've got one foot in the door with that. And I feel like all those skills just kind of interweave. And I thought that was lovely. And I've looked into it in a bit more detail. And I met with, she's quite popular on social media, Poppy with the pink hair. And she's a reception teacher. She runs her own dance school, and she was a Class Dojo ambassador. And when I was sort of thinking about her career, I had another look on her LinkedIn profile, and she's now a Canvassador. So Canva have like pinched her to come and work for them. But when I asked about Class Dojo, how does it work? And this idea that you could be an ambassador for a company that genuinely wants to make a difference in education, then you want the people that are at that coalface, don't you? You want the people that are, in that zone, that you can draw upon their skills and their expertise so they can be really honest. Does this work with their students? Does it work with the school? What kind of hiccups are there? And I like this idea that you could perhaps build up a bit of a career with that, and potentially you could use that to sort of springboard off into something else, either creating your own business like we've all done, or for a company that does something that you're genuinely interested in. So I think it's kind of a bit of a combination of, I see, and I've seen in my schools, and you probably have as well, and I was definitely one of these people that would come up with initiatives, and these are teacher-led initiatives that I wanted to do because I wanted to experience that. Everything from training as a kayak instructor to putting on big school shows or competing in national dance competitions, all of that came from me. I was even laughing the other day that my tutor group, a lady I shared with, really hated me because I was always putting my tutor group into competitions. We ended up at Radio 1 doing like a chat about what it's like to be a teenager. And so we all trained up there, and it was just an amazing experience for those kids. And we all know teachers like that, or teachers that would want to be like that. And no one sort of pats you on the back if you do those kind of teacher-led at the end of the year. That was quite nice, but no one really understands the sort of energy and the passion that you put in. And so it's kind of up to us as teachers to celebrate that, and which is why I'm working on a new style platform so teachers can really celebrate all these interesting things that they're doing. And potentially those things could lead to jobs or voluntary work, again, which increases your skills massively. So, yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
I think it is such I don't know what it is about teaching as a career, and I don't know if it's the same perhaps in nursing or GPs or something like that.
Mm,
We're very like we're a very specific type of person, I think. And you get, when you want to be a teacher, it really is one of those things that you like. If you want to be a successful teacher, you have to really, really want to be a teacher, and you've got this drive to be a
mm,
teacher, and you love teaching, and it is a real passion type career, and it's really hard to think of a different job because
Mhm.
you're so in love with that job as a teacher. And I remember when
mm,
I went through burnout, I got really, really ill, and I was like, I don't think I can go back. And I tried a few times, and I was just like, I was battling in my mind all the time. Well, I don't want to leave this. I absolutely love teaching, but there's something about teaching that is making me ill. And it was just trying to, so what do? I haven't got a clue what to do at this point, because you
mm,
can't see another career, because it's like, well, this is what I want to do, and it's a really hard battle that you go through to try and figure out. So yeah, really homing in on what are your skills, like what have you learned, what are your assets that you can bring to another company. And I know there's a lot of ed tech startups out there at the moment that might have really good technical knowledge about certain parts of the industry, but have there's no teaching experience in there
Mhm.
really. They might have a bit here and there, but they don't know
Mhm.
everything, and they haven't lived it for 15 years, and know all the ins and outs of what it's like. So all that knowledge was educated. It you can bring that into those sorts of environments, and it's really, really useful knowledge. I've even at our investment readiness course over the last couple of days, there was one company, I'm not going to say too much about what the company does, but I was just like, why isn't your audience schools? Because this would be amazing in schools. And they'd not really thought about it. And I was like, yeah, if you did this in primary school, this would be, and it's having that knowledge and experience that you can really bring in. So teachers are so valuable with all their knowledge. So it's really, really important. And I think it's a brilliant thing that you're doing is, and also keeping them in teaching as well, not like, forcing them out or anything like that. Think about, okay, well, what else could you do with these skills? Is there a better school that's a better fit, or that kind of thing? I think that's a really, really good approach to it. It's exciting. So can we tell us any more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and really, again, it's come from the audience and what they want, and also my experiences with teachers having pay cuts and still having to do the same job. Like
Mm-hmm.
schools struggle
mm,
with money, so how can we save schools a bit of money? And I think one of the ideas that we were thinking about is getting this right fit. So this idea that you could look for an organization that shares the same sort of values as you, and that you are engaged in the work that they're doing, and that being a right fit. That's the same with the school as well, and each school's really different, and they have a different sort of
mhm,
focus. So what we're kind of hoping is that we could get schools to create these interesting profiles that aren't just like Ofsted report and how many people are on roll and things like that, but they could celebrate, this is the tech that we're using in school, and this is why we love using Bromcom or Sims or Arbor or what.
Mm.
They could write down the tech, and they could review the tech as well that they're using. They could celebrate some of the great things that they've done. So like my husband's school, they had Sustrans, the cycle to school cycle charity, in, and every year they had them in, and they increased the kids cycling by like 50%, and maintain this healthy lifestyle. Well, you don't see that, do you, on a banner
Mm.
outside? No one says that. So
Yeah.
creating these kind of beautiful cards which have like some element of fun, what's your tagline for your school, what are your missions, what's your values, but also if what song would you be on Spotify if your school was a song, like add a bit of creativity into it as well, but also do the same with teachers and their profiles. So all these amazing things that you've done throughout your teaching career, which, yes, you might have got a box of chocolates or a bottle of wine from that nice parents. There's always one. No one else is celebrating that. You should be able to celebrate that. So you could create a profile that was really colorful, and like highlight of my
Mm.
career has been X, Y, and Z. And whether that's working with just one student to make them stay in school, or whether that's working
Mm.
with 500 students on a big competition, all of that is really valuable and tells you a lot about who you are as a person. And then if you see a school that has that sort of fit, oh, they're using the same ed tech products that I use, or their initiative for
Mm.
next year is to get girls into STEM. I love getting, and you start
Yeah.
making those connections. And rather than looking at a job specification and it says a maths teacher who's engaging, inspirational, motivational, all of these like dull things. It's like, this is our school. This is what we stand for. Yes, we want a maths teacher, but we also, it would be great if someone brought in, I don't know, like the dance competition or the STEM or the eco clubs or whatever it is that teachers are also passionate about. So yeah, sharing these teacher-led in initiatives, I guess, and celebrating them and rewarding those teachers for putting it up there. And then people like Canva, if there's like a primary school teacher who's loves Canva and is sharing their resources and they're beautifully executed, that's your ambassador right there. That's the person who's going to speak for your brand, because they are on top. They're like A game of what they're doing on Canva. And then other teachers can benefit. And I think one of the things that's quite nice is like this, almost like this CPD, when you're at school and you have someone come in, and sometimes they're a great speaker, aren't they? And you really you resonate with what they're saying. And sometimes you think, well, I know that and I've done that for X amount of years and this isn't that interesting or relevant. But if you were on a group that was just for teachers and you could follow those types of teachers and say, right, I'm working in a demographic that has got EAL is this, pupil premium is this, and this school in Leeds and I'm down in Dorset, they've got a similar kind of thing. What's worked for them? Like, oh, I've got a behavior issue. What's worked for them? I've got a planning issue. What's worked for them? And those conversations, just being a bit more open, because we're so good as teachers at sharing stuff and helping each other. But no one knows to ask that person who's a million miles away, because you don't know they exist.
Yeah, we work usually with teachers. You talk to the people, if you're in an academy trust, you're kind of in that kind of bubble, or your local authority bubble, and you don't necessarily speak to teachers in different areas of the country. So this sounds really, really interesting.
Thank you.
Because it's this multi-dimension to the teacher, and I liked how you described the sort of traditional boring job description and what it's actually needed for the changing face of what I would say is education. This multi-dimensional teacher, and a teacher who's leaning out beyond the walls of their classroom and beyond the walls of their academy trust. And it's really, really important to bring these experiences together for professional growth and for the growth of your pupils. And it's, I always say, I think everyone should have had a stint at teaching. So in my own experience, I was in corporate IT, then I taught for 14 years, then I came out of teaching, and the teaching experience and learning about people, that's the one that stood me in the best stead in every single thing that I've done since. It's that interaction with people and being able to read people, to understand them, to be highly adaptable. So teaching, I think, is the bedrock of almost every single thing else. I mean, I'm sure the people who are social workers and nurses and police officers will say similar, because it's this people interaction, and it's really, really important. So I'd say everyone needs a stint as a teacher. That's what I'm saying. I'd love to know what our listeners would say to that.
And I think as well, you develop a love for learning, don't you? I mean, I think most teachers I know are lifelong learners, and you're almost forced into it in a way. It might be natural, but you're forced into it because each year you've got a new cohort of students with new, skills and abilities that you need to tweak your lesson plans, your schemes of learning to their individual needs and their needs as a cohort. And I think that's why teachers quite often are they don't just want to be in the classroom. Don't get me wrong, most teachers I speak to, the best bit of teaching is being in front of those students and getting that feeling when the lesson's just gone so well and you can just feel the energy in the room. That's fantastic. But also, you might have ambitions outside of the classroom, and that's okay. And it's okay, but where do you find those things? So I'm hoping with the app that we'll also get educational companies on there as well that will say, you know what, we want a freelancer for this, and we want someone to, look over our exam board stuff and tweak it. And, and they can find these people that are genuinely having these conversations about it because that's what they're passionate about, rather than just putting a job advert and hoping they get the right person, but they're actually find them through the app. So yes, that's what I'm hoping for, that teachers can start living a bit more flexibly and finding a fit and just being happy. And if they're happy, they're gonna thrive in whatever environment they're in. And fingers crossed, one foot in the door at school.
Absolutely.
I think this is it.
Same.
It's the flexibility thing that you draw on there. It's like it's such an inflexible system at this point in time, and I know more teachers are going part-time and things like that, and there are like job shares and stuff. It is getting a little bit better, but like, you know, I've been piloting Flock XR, which is our app that we've made in a lot of schools. I've actually taught it to 450 young people now, which has been amazing. And the energy that I get from that, and seeing the excitement and the joy and all that kind of stuff, I absolutely love it. So I know I'm at a point where I could probably do a class a week. That'd be fine. But I just know how unrealistic that is in terms of the way schools work and things. So like, if I wanted to do that, I'd probably have to do a day a week, and that feels too much. But if there was a way that I could just be that little bit more flexible, and I feel like I like the supply idea, but at the same time I don't, because I would want a class. I want to be the teacher for that class. So if it was, you know, a year 7 or a, you know, a GCSE group or whatever, I want that to be my class. But I don't want the whole full-time, you know, all the stuff that goes along with it. And I still think we're a long way from sorting the system out to getting to that amount of freedom for teachers. But it may be, if we've got teachers that only want to teach for 1 day or 2 days, and then the other 3 days they're working with an ed tech startup, or, you know, they're writing blogs, or they're writing curriculum resources for, you know, a curriculum design company, that kind of thing. I feel like that would help bring more energy in, because when I turn up to a classroom, I've got so much energy, like, and I'm so excited to teach. And when you're a full-time teacher, it isn't, you can't bring that energy, you can't bring to every single lesson. I mean, you try your absolute best to, and that's why you're so exhausted on a Friday and all the way through the weekend and all the way through your holidays. But you know, you just can't. Whereas if you're dipping in and out, then you do have that energy to make that lesson better. The learners are going to get a much better experience. They're going to do better in their, you know, exams. If exams are that important, you know, you're going to have, like, that's going to happen too. So yeah, we've really got to, I am definitely a system fixer, and I think there is a lot to do in the education system to fix to get to this point. And hopefully, you know, this app is the start of that. I feel like, you know, and if more people can go on board with that way of thinking, you know, you as head teachers, managing teachers in your school, like, wouldn't you rather have really happy teachers that have got loads of energy for your young people? Like, I know if I was a head teacher, I would want that. I wouldn't want exhausted teachers. So yeah, it's figuring that out. I think you're on to something.
Yeah, I think there'll be lots of comments on this segment of the podcast.
Yeah.
Roughly about every 2 to 3 months, I find myself in a classroom getting engaged with, you know, it might be a girls' day, you know, showing girls what's available in tech, or it might be book readings around my charity technology books for children. And the energy you get from young people and the interactions, it's great. I always come away thinking, wow, that's really, really good. I've had a great day. But there are aspects of teaching which I did when I was a teacher, which I don't need to do now. As you said, you know, it's this multi-dimensional, changing type of work, and traditional careers are struggling with change, I'd say. And it's something, I know it's on quite a few agendas when you read the news, that there does need to be a change to make the profession fit for the age in which we're living in, really. So I'm going to move us along with the podcast. Katie, are there any tips you'd like to share with our listeners? Any tips for their professional journeys gleaned from your own experiences?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest tips is to almost do a sort of key skills audit on yourself every now and then, like maybe at the end of every academic year. Just keep some notes about what you've done that year and what you're really proud of, but then quantify it. And I think that's the important thing, because when I say to teachers, what are you proud of? It's mainly the emotional response. So I was just so proud that this child didn't get kicked out of school, or I was so proud of my tutor group because they did X, Y, and Z, or there was one child who was ill and they still got a GCSE. That's what they're proud of. And that's a really strong reason that we go into the profession in the first place, isn't it? That emotional connection that we have with the job. But actually, how can you quantify that? So I spoke to this one chap about this girl who'd left or was about to be kicked out, and he took her under his wing and he worked with her. He worked with the teachers to create like a plan for her. He reduced some of her hours a bit so he could have some more mentoring time with her. And it turned out that she then finished her GCSEs, and he was like, so that was great. And I said, okay, well, what happened next? Oh, yes. So she went on to do A levels, and then she got all of her A levels. Oh, amazing. And what happened next? Oh, well, now she's got a job in the city after going to university for 3 years, and she got a 2-1. And you're like, wow. And so the start of it was this very emotional story about a girl who was a carer for her mum and looked after her sisters and just like fought back at school and fought the system. But it took one person to just nurture that. But when you see that big picture, and if you can lead with the end result. So I helped a student who was going to get kicked out of school by nurturing them and mentoring them. And now they're doing this job in the city. I mean, that's it. It's adding that layer to it. And I think following that thread. So everything you've done, why? I like the dance things that I did. They're amazing. The competitions that I did, and I had like hundreds of students. I had Down syndrome students, girls that were profoundly deaf for dancing, and no one knew. I never made a thing about it. It was just we were all dancers. And I can quantify that data. I can look at it and say how many students did it, how much exercise were they doing, did they get healthier, was attendance better, and you can look at all of these different aspects and build that up. So yes, your initiative that you do at school is amazing, but it's down to you to kind of quantify that and say, okay, well, what skills was I using in that particular moment, and what is the end result of that? And I think that's really important that teachers learn to do that. And then I think the sort of burnout thing is a real issue, but if you are in control of what you've done and these proud moments, that's fantastic. And if you want to email everyone in the school and tell them that, that's fine too, but for yourself it's really important.
Fantastic, thank you. I mean, I do think we should always celebrate what we're doing. It's not boasting, as someone said to me, it's facts. If you have done that, it's facts. So talk about it, and it's really important. And I think sometimes we're a bit shy, and sometimes there is judgment out there, but it's not boasting, it's facts. And that's really important to remember. Rebecca, what tips have you got?
Gosh, I think maybe, I don't know, this is a tricky one, this one, because I always find talking about teaching a little bit emotional, because I think I'm still like, oh, but I mean, I am coming out of it because I've got back in the classroom. I think it is just sort of, don't underestimate your skill set, I guess. And it doesn't matter sort of how kind of stressed or whatever you get, give yourself a moment, take some time out, and then really reflect and think about what's gonna help you sort of try a different direction. And at least now there is a tool, those who can, at least there is a tool there. I mean, there was nothing there when I was going through all my stuff, so I would definitely say go to your website and start thinking about that. But yeah, and also never stop learning, because you always can grow. Like wherever you are, you can always grow into something new and more exciting. So don't give up.
It's great. We did teach is a great name, and those who can is an even better name. So I really like it. I shared it with someone who isn't into teaching, and they saw the name and said, oh wow, that's a great name, because it really is those who can. Tell you what, I'm going to share a tip. So I've got this book, 30 Tips for Self-Development, which came about because people would always say to me, how do you get ahead? What do you do? What can I do to improve? And so I penned 30 tips, and each podcast episode I tend to read a tip out. And so tip 15 is around skill development, and especially since we've been talking about going on to courses and looking at your skill set. And it basically says utilize online courses, boot camps, certifications to build, develop, and maintain your skill set. And then there's the reflection question opposite for you to complete, because it's ongoing. Look at what you're doing, assess it, take stock, and then it helps you to move forward. And it's really, really important. And so I'd encourage anyone to, have a look at the book. You can have a flick through on Amazon and the preview sample, and to start really just taking time to invest in yourself, I'd say. And that is what is eventually going to help to move you on and develop you within your career, and let your passions shine through in a slightly different way. It's not quiet and, I shouldn't, shout about it. I'm going to use a quote that it was when I won the Tech Women 100 award, and one of the women who was one of the speakers, she said, I'll tell you what, boast about what you're doing, sing it, you have to sing it. And it's a narrative, a story I keep hearing, say what you're doing. If you don't say what you're doing, no one else will know about it. So, the word boast can be seen as a bad word sometimes, but it is, fly your own flag, do it, and do it nicely. That's what, do it with compassion, do it with humanity, just do it nicely. And there is a subtle difference there, own what you're doing, and it's, other people will praise you for it and be inspired by it. Now, that's my tip. Those are my tips. I said quite a few, I think, there.
Can I just jump in on that tip that you said, the courses? Because I think, like, when I was teaching, my idea with a course was like university. It had to be like something accredited by a university. And my experience outside of that is there are some incredible courses out there that are run by coaches, by people, by even online courses. So if you're vaguely interested in something, just go for it. I know Open University have loads and loads of free courses, so you can just dip your toe in, but it doesn't need to be accredited by a top university. You can grow and learn by doing so many different types of courses, and just ask other people about their experiences as well. Like that's the thing, isn't it? The more you ask, the more you know, and then you can pick the right thing for you. So yeah, I think that, like, experiencing those courses is a very important idea, Beverly.
Thank you, Katie. I'm going to sum it up as a democratization of learning. We can actually get learning in so many different places. It's important, if I'm being from a TikTok clip, a YouTube clip, a course on Future Learn. There's so many different ways that we can learn. And I'd say it's never been easier to learn. We're in an age of it's really easy to learn. But, I could talk for ages, and all of us here, we could talk for ages. I think we're going to wrap it up. So, Katie, thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd just like to say for our listeners the name of your website again, and also the social handles, please.
Yes, so you can see at the bottom, thosewhocan.org, and most of our socials are the same, those who can or _org. So please do check us out on social media and join our mailing list. I think, for a little plug there, our mailing list has been the real power of the business, because we cannot convince companies to post jobs with us or to share opportunities with us if we don't have a good database. And we've got 21,000 teachers on our database, and they are really engaged, and it's a brilliant place to be. So we have opportunities, extras, webinars, jobs, all sorts of things on there. So it's not just about leaving teaching, it's about anything that could improve your career. And we try and showcase like wonderful people that are doing amazing things. So yeah, please do join the newsletter. That would be great.
Oh, fantastic. It's wonderful. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today on Tech Journey Insights.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Wow, that was a good podcast, I think.
It certainly was. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to listening to that back. It was great.
Yeah.
Really, really great. I think we'll just go straight to just wrapping up. We're going to speak to everyone again very soon in the next episode. So you've been listening to Tech Journey Insights, the podcast exploring the intersection of technology, learning, and human potential. We're here to connect you with the wisdom and innovation to help you to thrive in this digital future. We'll see you again soon on another episode.